Hello, hello. Welcome in. Sit back, relax. We'll take the reins here for about a half an hour. Daniel Gilman, Mick Haley. We've got a top 16, the only postseason, mid-season poll that we're going to get from the Division One Volleyball Committee. We've got that to talk about, a new AVCA Terraflex coaches poll. As always, we are brought to you by SNA Sports, better equipment for a better game. Both of us are displaying our comfortable winter approaching Ren Athletics gear that one or maybe two of you per episode could win. All you have to do is email us on Sunday night, Monday morning with your six rotations team of the week, two outside hitters, two middles, one opposite, one center, one bro. And Mick, we had a whale of a week. Louisville was a huge part of a massive week. Unfortunately, not in the winners column for either. Michigan, the fans had themselves a historic week. The players, not so much. And as always, Sunday night drama, right? In Austin. Didn't know what you were to expect. 8:30, 7:30 local time start last night. Texas and Oklahoma did not disappoint. Mick, one thing that we like to talk about at this point in the season, what are you starting to pick up? What are some things that you're keying in on in late October?
Well, I think right now the teams that are led by one or two players are in a point where they struggle a little bit. The competition evens out a little bit because those players are getting a little bit tired, and we would say that except for Babcock at Pittsburgh, and she doesn't seem to get tired. You just keep throwing the ball up to her, but getting scoring from all of the players on your team is extremely important late here in October. We're finishing up testing times at the universities. Players are having to travel now. It's getting to be hard. And so the evenness of the matches shows up now. Maybe the best teams win a lot of the time, but not all the time anymore. You saw Wisconsin just get beat at home. That's very unusual. Louisville losing at home, very unusual. Teams don't like to lose at home, and many teams were losing at home this week. Some in tight matches, and some where they it wasn't that competitive.
Four different ranked teams fell to unranked teams. How many dropped out of the top 25? Let's find out in a minute. But first, you talk about Wisconsin. So why don't we show you the new top 10 here on October 20th's poll? And with that, the Badgers are out of the top 10, replaced by TCU into that 10 spot. Louisville drops from 4 to 8. They were upset by a Jaden Livings less SMU team. Malaya Jones was absolutely phenomenal on Friday night. A 19-17 fifth set win for SMU. They bump up only one spot, surprisingly, after SMU then turned around and swept a Notre Dame team that Mick won the first two sets against Pitt. And everyone started, I got some texts. Is it happening? What's going on? Both sets were 27-25. Olivia Babcock unleashed a little bit, didn't have a great match, but Pitt won in five, 15-4 against Notre Dame. That's the same team that SMU then swept. So, Mick, I think that Louisville and Pitt have earned the right for us to lead our show, breaking down what has been, I would say, what are we, halfway through the decade? This is the decade's premier rivalry in college volleyball. When you have two teams that meet in the Final Four multiple times, and every time they play, it is incredible. Now, it was obviously Wisconsin, Nebraska towards the beginning of this decade and the end of last decade. But right now, I would say, when Pitt and Louisville lace them up, Mick, and when Olivia Babcock gets 41 kills, which is the most of any Division One player in college volleyball this year, they've earned it. What'd you like the most about that match on Sunday?
Well, I think that what you're getting from Louisville is a team competing. And they have lost, I think, at least three 5-game matches this year. And what happens is they don't have the big stick at the end of the match, but they compete and they've had their opportunities to win all of these matches, They've had match points several times in several of the matches and haven't been able, they don't have a go-to that can really terminate like a Babcock or a Stafford or these players that you see that take the ball at the end of the match and they do good things with it. Uh, Louisville's been unlucky. Pitt's been lucky. Pitt's playing without Moritz, though, the left side from the Netherlands.
He got hurt.
I'm not sure about her injury, why she's not out there. So they were a little bit handicapped, gave Louisville a little bit of an advantage. They couldn't take advantage of it, but they're playing hard. So I like both teams. I like both. I see why Pitt gets behind sometimes because they wait for Babcock to carry them instead of stepping up and going out there and trying to do more. I think Pitt could use their middles more. Bree Kelly doesn't seem to be getting a lot of balls in the middle, but she's anchoring a good defense. I think Chacoin played much better early, but her MO is to play good in the first four sets, not so much when they zero in on her in the fifth set. And so Louisville had trouble scoring from the left side at the end of the match, and I think that was their undoing. Yet they still had chances to win it both times. So I like Louisville. I wouldn't have put them as low as the coaches put them. I don't want to play them in the tournament. They're not going to win the national championship, but they're going to beat some people in the tournament, and I would be worried about that.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say that nobody wants to play them in the beginning of the tournament, especially in Louisville. But that place has shown a little bit of a worry spot, and that's what the broadcast team was mentioning. You know, the phenomenal A+ trio. Courtney and Holly and Madison. And so when you watch Louisville and Mick, you mention it, that is their fourth fifth set loss of the season. They are to Texas, Kentucky, SMU, and Pitt. So you got two sides of that. Those are all great losses, and we got an email from a listener who wanted to know, and it was Gregory asking, what is it about Louisville that you're not seeing? And you just answered it. Florida and Louisville, the question was the email at sixrotations@gmail.com. What changes would you try out for a team to try to change the dynamics to close out a match like that better? But Mick, when you watch it and you get that comeback because Pitt felt like they were owning the fifth set, Wilson picks up an ace, Cabello gets a block, it's 10-9. There's not really an answer to like how do you stop Olivia Babcock in system, because then she picks up her 40th and then her 41st kill, it's match point. Bree Kelly puts it away and Pitt now has seventh ranked wins.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like they had two of their top two or three players they went to and they scored when they needed to score. You couldn't get that from Louisville on the left side for sure. Both those left sides just have to keep working hard to get better in the clutch. I think it's the clutch play now for Louisville. There's nothing wrong with that team. They compete like banshees. They really have a good opposite that's really starting to score for them also. I like Louisville a lot. I like to watch them. I can feel their heartburn right now, losing those five-set matches. But listen, that will come back to haunt everybody else at the end of the season because they will know how to play under pressure. And if they work on this and don't view it as a problem, view it as something that helps them get better, they'll be a team, like I said, that you don't want to play in December.
So let's go ahead and look at the rest of our top 25. I do want to jump into the committee's top 16. So let's give our due, see where Wisconsin fell. They go from 9 to 12. Purdue retains the Mo Nunn spike. The sky is blue, in the last decade, and that seems to be the case. Gainbridge Fieldhouse looked like a rowdy atmosphere on Thursday, 6,500 in attendance. Indiana drops from 22 to 23, not too far of a fall. They've got a big week though, Mick. IU will take on Minnesota on Friday, and we can kind of get to those upsets because it started Wednesday. Tennessee, they stay at 16. The coaches give respect to Florida. The Gators were up 2-1. Tennessee forced to fifth. Jordan Bird broke her nail at 13 all. They had to bandage it up. Madison had a great, comment. Madison Fitzpatrick, she's like, listen, it looks like a funny joke, but that is a substantial missed piece to have that acrylic nail missing. They bounce back, pick up a block to win that in five. So that was the beginning of our upset bonanza. Then it's Miami, and the rankings don't necessarily reflect it. They go from 14 to 15, but they're up 2-0 late night in Berkeley. And things get a little spooky late night in Berkeley, don't they? Macau with a reverse sweep on Thursday night to catapult a great night of volleyball. Arizona State beat BYU in five as well.
Yeah, and what happens is once you take that breath and relax, and you're on the road, and the other team all at once feels it for whatever reason, then it's hard to stop momentum, and that's what happens, and that's really what happened to these teams. And so I think those are question marks, though, that you have to look at those teams and can they perform on a consistent basis and overcome these things. Right now, I'm impressed with Nebraska and Texas going on the road, managing these teams that everybody wants to get that one win, that one upset, that one thing that makes them feel good for the whole season. So far, they've been able to hold that off both at home and on the road. I think Nebraska's fans are really helping the way they're traveling with the team. That's a nice thing for our sport, and the more people start doing that, even the better it's going to be. But people are going to have to start playing in bigger places because more people want to see the games.
Madison Square Garden for Rutgers. I mean, who says no, right?
Yeah.
The atmosphere around it and the fans, again, you Nebraska fans deserve all the credit. You feel something magic. Why not run with it? It's going to be a memory that your daughters and your aunts and your nephews, everyone is going to talk about potentially if this undefeated season can come about or this magical championship that's been due for a couple years. Regardless, Mick, Nebraska looks like, to me, the best team in the nation, and it's time to bring in the committee as well. I think there was a lot of buzz. There was some talk on social media preparing Nebraska fans for Texas to be number one, but I've been pretty steadfast this season. I felt like the Huskers have earned the one spot. And so as we see the committee's top 16, maybe some surprises in the Big 10, 14, 15, and 16, getting some love there. We'll see if that continues, if success waves, but obviously Minnesota then dropped a match as Washington beat Penn State in five. Oregon beat Minnesota in four on just a crazy Friday night in volleyball. But Mick, two records in Michigan. The Breslin Center at Michigan State, 11,500. The 19th record since 2023, broken by Nebraska volleyball on the road or in neutral sites. And then Michigan, 12,700, a new state record. Only one of the six sets, Mick, did Nebraska let up 20 points. Andy Jackson is on a run. We'll talk about her, I'm sure, more at the end of the show. They got the one spot. And I don't think, especially after struggling with Oklahoma, as of course, you mentioned rivalries might do that. I think Nebraska's kind of sitting head over heels right now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who's going to really challenge them. That's the thing
Yeah.
that I'm looking at because they overpower you so much on the pins. I mean, both pins have dynamic attack ability, and with Jackson going off of 1 foot, that just strengthens the right pin even more. I like the way they were running Alec in the middle a lot. That's really good, and they're doing some subbing in case they have injury now. So. They're not going to let down if they have injury. They're going to keep playing, and I think they feel like they're getting ready for that. So I like that a lot. I see that Texas is also starting to do that. They're starting to rotate their middles so they get three middles going because, when a good middle goes down, it's really hard then to keep your defense at a championship level. So I see Texas doing that with their middles. They're working on a double sub. We saw the double sub a little bit from Nebraska earlier. Nebraska could really work 6-2 in certain situations and really put the pressure on you with
Yeah.
those big outsides. So they have some options. They may not want to try to do that, but but that's another option they have to do well. I don't see that from other teams. I don't see the other teams having that kind of depth. In fact, Wisconsin's just holding on right now with the injuries they've had. Minnesota can't compete at the level they want to compete with the injuries they've had. So people are doing very innovative coaching right now. We call it kind of a magician sleight of hand stuff. They're getting points every way they can, and they're doing quite a good job. But those teams at the top, those two we're talking about, are pretty loaded. I do wonder how they will do facing the Pitt block, for instance, or Nebraska's, excuse me, or Stanford's scoring ability in all five positions. Those are things that I like to see.
So, Mick, I think that brings in the conversation. So, as we look again at the committee's top 16, and of course, this was before Penn State lost, I imagine. Maybe it was after. You don't really know when a lot of these decisions were made because those two Friday night upsets, Penn State and Minnesota, fell. Miami kept out of this top 16. I want to compare you and my media poll top 16, which will come out. If you're watching this Tuesday, you can catch it over on the 900 square foot website or Twitter page or wherever. But I got the same top four, right? Nebraska, Texas, Pitt, Kentucky, Pitt even more so after beating Louisville. And then SMU 5, I'm with them. I've got Louisville 6. I put Stanford at 7. And we both like Stanford a lot more than the committee does, as the Cardinal are down at 11 behind Creighton. And, I think TCU is in a fun spot at 9. They can really play their way into a better position in my eyes this week, as we'll see TCU take on BYU and Kansas. Well, what do you like about this? Wisconsin's at 12. I think that's a little high to put them over Texas A&M.
Well, I tell you that this grouping of five, Stanford, SMU, Louisville, ASU, TCU, I think that group of five is really interesting. You might slip Creighton and A&M into that group and make it a group of seven, but I think any of those teams can beat each other. I'm not sure about Purdue in the group yet. I'd like to think Purdue could be in that group, but I don't know. That would make a group of eight. Uh, I think SMU is hot right now. I had SMU at 6. I had Stanford still at 5. I have Louisville at 7. I want to see ASU beat some more teams. I need ASU to accept the challenge in the Big 12 and take on all comers. And if that's their only chance to show that they can play back-to-back big matches. TCU is still scary to me. I'll tell you, they are a team. The other team, I don't want to play TCU. I don't want to play Louisville in the tournament. They're just absolutely scary.
And I teased it. Well, I'll give you a quick heads up of this upcoming week. Wednesday night, FS1 at 7 Eastern, Kansas TCU. And then Thursday night on ESPN Plus, BYU Baylor. Friday night, Minnesota, Indiana on Big Ten Network. That should be a lot of fun. Two teams in the top 16 there. Minnesota, Purdue on Sunday. BYU, TCU on Saturday. So make a big week in the Big 12. And then a little ESPN doubleheader on Sunday. Florida, Arkansas at 1. Louisville, UNC at 3. And Mick, maybe the most fun match of the week. I want to talk more about it later, but UTEP, Western Kentucky on Friday night. 100 matches in a row won by Western Kentucky. Did I see that correctly? The only two losses for UTEP the last 2 years are to the Hilltoppers. That's going to be a fun one at Diddle.
Yeah, and both teams are playing well. Actually, both teams are well coached. Western Kentucky, though, has been a powerhouse at that level for years and years and years, and their coach, I think, has been there 23 years now, if I'm not mistaken, maybe
Yeah,
a little
Travis
bit more.
Hudson.
Yeah. So I think that's good. I look forward to some of these matches. Here's scary. Minnesota cannot afford to lose two this weekend.
Yeah.
They lose two, I think they're in jeopardy of any kind of a good place in the tournament. And on the other hand, if Indiana loses to them or Minnesota wins two, other two teams are going to be moved down a little bit. So the Big Ten's playing each other. Usually they benefit from these matches and move up in the RPI just simply because they're all rated high. But at this point, the at least we're not going to rate them that high.
Well, this enters a discussion, Mick, that I wanted to confront, and I don't really want to get into it in the comments. I'd rather bring it to the show and take the conversation. But I will let me quickly talk about those two losses for Minnesota and Penn State. You know, the Penn State loss to Washington is an interesting story because it was a former Nittany Lion that led the Huskies with 16 kills, Alexis Markley, and then Washington kind of took their former coach and Keegan Cook and probably put a little chip on the shoulder. So I'm impressed with that win for Oregon to bounce back. I mean, check that for Minnesota to bounce back and to go and beat Washington in that second match after losing to Oregon. That was impressive. But this is what I want to touch on, Mick, because I'm not sure there is a full understanding to what we mean when we say that a conference is weaker than usual. So this is where the debate began in the comments. Kay Stepke kind of threw a little passive aggressive in there, but we'll just cut it into the conversational part of the question. Just curious to know how a conference can look weaker and weaker once they're in conference play. And she means that by saying, well, they're just losing to their own conference. How can they be weaker? So this is how I'm going to answer it. And then I want you to give your take. In my eyes, the Big Ten Conference this season is as weak as it's been in a decade because there is not a second and third best team that is competing for Final Four consideration, right? There is one incredible team, and then the rest of the teams, like you mentioned, Mick, they don't quite put up an argument to be in the top five. Purdue is at 8. Do they deserve that? We're going to see because they're just beating up on the other teams in the middle. Now, Indiana, Wisconsin, you know, Penn State, Minnesota, these teams have not impressed me in conference play. If they were to have run through the bottom of the Big Ten, then I would say the Big Ten is strong. But because they have shown weakness, that's what I mean by saying that the conference is weak when you only have one dominant team. And that's what we saw from the ACC forever until we added the parity of having, you know, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Pitt a couple of years ago. And that has since risen, obviously adding Stanford and SMU. But what do you think about that? What do you think about when you talk about a conference as weak like the Big Ten?
Well, I think there's one other factor, and there were many Big Ten teams this year rebuilding. So their first 4 weeks scheduling, they did not schedule as high a level of teams out of conference as the Big Ten has normally done. They went for wins. Now, if they get wins, that's usually positive. But if the teams they beat don't keep winning and they lose, that lowers their rating, even though they beat those teams. Michigan State is a good example, who's playing very well right now, but they picked a lower level of competition in the first 4 weeks to get their team ready for the Big Ten play. So their ranking starts lower than normal because of the way they constructed their schedules. So one of the other reasons why beating a Big Ten team in the Big Ten doesn't help you as much this year is many of the teams were picking off competition early to get confidence within their players, to work on lineups, to develop people, that sort of thing. And so now when they lose in the Big Ten, it hurts more than if they were beating each other up. And if they keep beating each other up, it's going to lower the whole group a little bit because
Yeah.
the number of big wins is not there as normal. And with Wisconsin getting beat like that in conference at home this weekend, that sends a significant message. Penn State losing on the road to Washington, that's a hard trip to make, but it's a hard trip to make to Sleepy Hollow also, when you go in to play Penn State. So
Yeah.
touche. So now the Big Ten it can't just rely on beating up on each other. Illinois is the one that's sneaking through that I think. And they have done this. They have been very shrewd about their scheduling over the years. And the coaches don't rank them high. The polls don't show them. Yet the RPI always has them in a position to get into the tournament. And right now they're 8-1, I believe, in the conference or something like that. Pretty high in wins and losses. Just haven't played the top teams yet. If they happen to beat some of those top teams in the conference, they're going to explode on the RPI list where the coaches have not been giving them credit for their ability.
and they're 20th, Illinois, in the RPI. So they're
Yeah.
right there. And if you wanted to go to the RPI and you want to go to, search NCAA stats, Fig stats, and it's a website that is an unofficial RPI keep up. But Mick, the only thing that was different between the RPI and the top 16 reveal was that Penn State was 16 and Miami was out of it. We imagine Penn State was 15, I should say. So Penn State on the RPI is 17, Miami is 16. All of the other top 15 teams got into that committee reveal. So does that tell you that the RPI may have a little bit more weight than it has in the past?
Well, I don't know if that's correct or not. The RPI is pretty standard. And what you have to look at is just the matchups of the teams and who played whom and how those teams fare. And if you were lucky enough to play in conferences that were not Big Four, but you played teams that are going to finish first in their conference, that gives you a tremendous boost. If you played teams in other conferences and those teams finished low in their conference, that hurts you. That doesn't help you, even though you beat those teams.
Yeah, and you know what? It really is a situation, Mick, that we have to keep tabs on because will Wisconsin be judged for not having their star setter if she comes back at the end of the year? Like, that's a really interesting thing. And with that, USC comes into Badgertown, into Madison, UW Fieldhouse, and the libero balls out. Their outside hitter, what is it? Weejay has an unbelievable match with her career high. And USC now, despite having that showdown with UCLA and kind of trying to figure out, all right, what's going to be the situation there, getting embarrassed by the crosstown rivals. Now UCLA has suffered a fault and USC's back in the picture. What are you starting to figure? Talk to me about the West Coast. Let's break it up. I don't want to talk about it as Big Ten or not. Tell me about the West Coast and the host chances for teams like that. We know Arizona State's probably locked into hosting, but aside from them, you need more West Coast schools. You've got Stanford and Arizona State. Would you maybe say that there's a chance that it's BYU and USC as that like last West Coast host opportunity?
Yeah, maybe, because all the way up to Oregon and Washington, uh, they're getting beat up. And with SC losing three in a row before this week, losing to UCLA and two on the road to Indiana, and I believe either Illinois or Purdue, I don't remember which was the other one, they were terminating down, and now we've got UCLA doing well. Oops, they lose this weekend again. So you're going to have to look and see how either SC or UCLA can host, and I don't think either of them are going to be able to unless they go on a run. So what does the NC2A do about host cities?
I think they're going to eventually give a little bit more love to the West Coast. I think I would say, Mick, that there is a lesser chance that we see Minnesota hosting than USC if they have a very similar resume. That's just going to be my guess. There are so many California teams. USC has a chance to play their way in without a doubt. I want to quickly go over a few of the other kind of bigger storylines for the weekend. TCU had a 4-set win over Kansas State. Arizona State with that 4-set win at Utah. How about Colorado? They stay ranked. They stay in the picture. Anna Berlitovich picked up a big matchup with the 5-set win against West Virginia. And then in that matchup between SMU and Louisville, it was a chaotic final set. Louisville had 4 match points. All of them were wasted. SMU held tall, and then finally Natalia Newsome was able to get the block to end that run of all side outs. And then it was an ugly error by Chacoin that ended it. And Mick, when you watch a team like that play, SMU is an example. If they lose Livings and she's out for a few weeks, how do you hold them? How can you rank them if they lose? The same thing with Glover, right? Arizona State maybe drops one without Glover. Do you consider the losses that Wisconsin suffers without Furbringer as bad if she comes back?
Yeah, that's the hard thing. I don't think in the RPI there's any any injury policy. You win or lose, and you go on your schedule and that sort of thing. I was thinking that SMU though, the question is, can they play themselves into a top four team? And if Livings is injured, they're going to have to really dig down deep. But knowing that I don't think she's injured that bad, I think she'll be back in a week or two. Then we'll see where SMU, if SMU is really one of those teams, along with Stanford, who you and I think are in that group, but the coaches haven't been ranking them there, and the RPI doesn't, I don't think, put them there. So I think there's some real questions in that regard. You've brought up hosting spots. That's a problem. You've also got differences in polls. All the polls now are different. And the committee gives you a poll that has teams on it in the top 16 that we don't have in the top 25. And so
Right.
that's a little bit challenging and hard for the coaches to take when they're out there looking at these teams, looking at the stats, watching the videos. So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes out.
All right, let's get to our six rotations team of the week. And I gave a little bit of love to some of our top teams, and I tried to kind of scoop down and find some players that we haven't mentioned yet. And Mick, you're going to like my first outside hitter. It's a freshman. She's in the SEC, hitting both matches this week. Abby Vanderwall hit over 390. I was really impressed with Sunday night's effort from a defensive perspective, hitting 400 against Oklahoma. She's my first outside.
Well, I went with Eva Hudson,
Yeah. Come on.
46 kills over the weekend, 104 swings, only 8 errors. What's impressive about Hudson is she was high error before. Now she's at Kentucky and she's keeping her errors down. It makes her a tremendous player for that team and really hard to defense. And the total number of points she earned for her team over the weekend, 49 points. That's
Tremendous.
almost two sets that she contributed herself, 25 points and 24 points.
Who's your second?
Oh, my second's Evan Hendricks from TCU. Get this, Hendricks, she puts up 57.5 points for the weekend,
Wow.
53 kills and 140 swings, only 10 errors. I mean, you watch the 5 game matches and you see those errors at the end, but you think some of these players are playing where they have not made more than 2 or 3 errors the whole match. And then that one swing gets to be just a lot of weight to put that thing down. So Hendricks and Hudson, my two from Kentucky and from TCU.
All right, I've got the Mick Haley combo here. I'm going from Texas out to USC, where London Weejay had that career high I mentioned. She hit over 300 with 24 kills at Wisconsin. And that's not the end of the women of Troy for me, but we head to the middle and I move down to Arizona, where the Sun Devils getting a little love. Haven't talked about Colby Neal this season. Their middle blocker, 10 blocks in the win over BYU, 7 kills, 1 error. And how about you? Do you have anyone named Andy Jackson by chance?
I don't this time.
Okay, okay, all right. Who do you got?
No, I've got Lizzie Andrews from Stanford again, 20 points this weekend,
Yep.
14 kills, 35 swings, only 2 errors. She continues to wow me, and she's a big person at the net, takes away a lot of area. And Kiara Reinhardt out of Creighton, 18 and a half points this weekend,
Woo.
15 kills, 25 swings, only 3 errors.
Yep, I've got Andrew as well, 7-0-14, and I was able to watch that Miami match. Mick, they went back and forth, 2 point set, extra points, 2 point set, 2 point set. Stanford picked up that massive third set, kind of demolished the morale of Miami, blew them out in the fourth. Lizzie Andrew, Elia Rubin, an honorable mention
Yep.
too. You know what? When I turn on ESPN on a Sunday morning and I'm watching NFL Sunday Countdown, do you know who I want to see on my screen? I want to see Olivia Babcock. Randy Moss broke down the Olivia Babcock tape on Sunday. I love to watch it. Prime time players make prime time plays, and that's what Babcock did on the biggest stage with 78 swings. I don't know if I've ever seen a 40-40, right? 40 kills, hitting over 400. It was a rare feat, and she's my opposite of the week.
Yeah, I agree with Babcock. I have her scored 79 and a half points. Get that. 70 kills, like you said, 149 swings. She was almost 50% kill for 150 swings. Think about that. That is just unbelievable.
Yeah, that's out of this world. What about setter?
Oh, you guess I think I'm saying this right. Naelis Cabello,
Cabello, yep.
Louisville. Cabello, I thought played one of her best weekends. She was 9 kills, no errors out of 10 attempts, 41 assists, scored 13 and a half points as the setter, and had 89 assists for the weekend. She just played her heart out. I tell you, Louisville is playing hard, let me tell you.
Yeah, I think that might be our first. I'm going to try to do a little research. That might be our first player nominated this season that went 0 and 2. But
Yep.
Cabello was certainly
Yep.
not the reason why Louisville lost. I went on the other side. I've got SMU's setter in Avery Carlson, 54 assists, 16 digs, continuing to quarterback that team, especially when you lose a player like Livings. Carlson was able to kind of work her way through the difference and the depths there. And then back to USC and the freshman libero with 28 digs against Iowa, 25 at Wisconsin. Taylor Deckert is my bro of the week.
Yeah, I'm with Emma Halter again. If you watch Texas play this weekend, I mean, I don't know how that kid doesn't get hurt. We have to put pads on her. She goes into the bleachers, she goes into the hallways. She is all over the court, but not only is she playing well, she's passing well, and she's leading. What I like is her leadership out there. She's my libero for this week.
It was hard. I wanted to give it to Malaya Jones, but then, Babcock comes in, takes
Yeah.
that right side
Yep.
away. Reagan Ennis for Virginia had two big matches in their matchups against Virginia Tech, a big Commonwealth Classic matchup there. 23 kills for Ennis in the five-setter earlier in the week. So there's my honorable mention, Mick. Congratulations to Wyatt for getting Weejay, Babcock, Neal, Carlson, and Deckert 5 correct. That's got to be the target for you guys at home. Try to combine it there. Mick, lastly, we got an email. I've got a minute here. I want to spread the word from Terry Heaton, who is upset that Nebraska matches are behind paywalls. And I agree with you, Terry. I don't know why Big Ten Network would show soccer over Nebraska Purdue last week. That didn't make much sense. I would like to see Nebraska on as many national TV games in the meat of the season as they are in the beginning of the season. So that is something that I'll help kind of project the opinions there of our fantastic friend who loves his Huskers. He says he misses them. Terry, just sign up for Big Ten Plus. I don't think it's that much. I just think you might have to click a couple buttons. But Mick, as always, it's a pleasure to chat with you. One more in October. We will talk next week. As always, he's Mick. I'm Daniel, and this is Six Rotations.